Well, let's just jump right into it. Leo, I just feel a sense of fraternity between ourselves because you're just a straightforward, straight shooting guy, and your work is brilliant. Folks, if you go over to leohohmann.com, LeoHohmann.com, first thing you see is red state governors threaten their own citizens with arrest if they don't comply with contact tracing investigators, up to 6 months in jail in Texas, of all places. Wow. Okay. So forget about what I said about the angst reducing. It's already producing angst just reading that headline. So where you been since we spoke last? You've been all over the place, just out there kicking backside and taking names. So just take us where you want to go. It's all about you.
Well, thank you, John. As you know, my book came out almost 4 years ago now. It's hard to believe, isn't it? Stealth Invasion. Yeah, the title was Stealth Invasion, Muslim Conquest Through Immigration and Resettlement Jihad, which leads you to believe what? That the book is about Islam. And it is, but it's about more than that, and it's still relevant today, John, because the book is not just about Islam, it's about globalism. And this idea being put forward by the elites of the world, not just America, that we should live in a borderless world and we should live in a godless world and we should live in a more centrally planned and managed society. And that was the direction we were heading, right? Before Donald Trump. Everything seemed, like it was coming down from the United Nations all the way filtering down to the through the federal government and to the states and down into the counties and eventually into your little nook and cranny wherever it was that you lived. The school boards were enacting what? Common Core? That was funded, as we know, by Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation. People were upset about it. Why? Because it was a centrally planned, one-size-fits-all template for our children. And it focused heavily on data mining and data collection on the children. Surveys and endless surveys and testing, not on their academic knowledge per se, although there was some of that, and that's fine, but on their attitudes, values, and beliefs. That was what triggered so much backlash against it. When parents found out that their children were being tested not for their knowledge, but for their attitudes, values, and beliefs. And think about it. That is a concerted effort to change the way people think. And that's always been the overriding motive of communism, Marxism. We're going to create a new society, and we're going to do that. We're going to change societies. Barack Obama called it what? Hope and change.
Oh yeah.
And and the evil ones were us. The gun-toting people clinging to their Bibles and their guns. And so Common Core was just the educational focus on the children because they're the easiest to change. But they want to change all of us who can. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, if you look them up and go to their website of the United Nations, it says repeatedly in their dogma and their literature that this plan for the world, they call it Agenda 2030, will leave no person behind. And so this is where I struggled, John. I tried in my book, it wasn't just about Islam. I brought up the whole, United Nations agenda, globalism, sustainable development. You can also call it technocracy. They're coming for us, folks. That is the message that I was trying to get out in that book. They're doing it on every level with the unfettered immigration. We saw that in 2014, 15, The floodgates were just opened up. We already have a huge amount of immigration in this country before that. 1 million people a year, at least. It'll go up to 1.5 sometimes in legal immigration. No other country does that. But that's not enough. We have to now allow illegal immigration as well. 1 million a year in legal immigrants is not enough. We need to open the borders and not vet, not even ask questions of those who are coming in. And it's just another way of tearing down society and dismantling the old order. It's there in the education system, it's in the immigration system, but a lot of people are stubbornly still refusing globalism and the globalist agenda. They want to be left behind by this agenda. I know I do. I'm a free thinker. You're a free thinker. We don't like to have our choices in life made for us by a nanny state government that's taking orders from globalists and doesn't represent us, but represents the billionaires and their globalist agenda. That's not us. That's not a lot of people. And so after 8 years of Barack Obama, the country went for something radically different, complete opposite end of the spectrum in Donald Trump. And we saw the same thing in the UK with Brexit. You know, we saw the people in Hungary and Poland going for more right-wing leadership. Italy. Then we had the Hong Kong protests, where Hong Kong people wanting to stay free and not be completely co-opted by the Chinese communists. And so all this stuff was going on, not just in America, but around the world. And then we get hit with this COVID-19 pandemic. Isn't that interesting? The impeachment, all the impeachment, you know, Russiagate, Ukrainegate, all of these impeachment attempts were, you know, complete failures. And I think that they were outed as not just failures, but frauds. And then this COVID thing, you know, and Donald Trump is not perfect, you know, like any other leader, he's not perfect, but I think he has been a thorn in the side of globalism. Yeah, you know, we saw it with the climate change issue where he pulled us out of the Paris climate deal. Then now he's defunding the World Health Organization. When they push him, he pushes back. It's the direct opposite type of Republican leadership that we've seen from the Bushes. He doesn't always get it right. You know, I thought he failed miserably by deferring to Dr. Fauci in the early days of this COVID crisis. There were other experts, health experts, he could have leaned on that were much, much, much closer to the truthful and effective way to deal with one of these pandemics. You don't lock people down. That was a grave mistake, and Fauci encouraged that. And in the early days, the first couple of months, I'd say month and a half at least, Trump seemed to be on board with that. Remember, he was saying by Easter, everybody's going to go back to church, and we're going to open things up. Well, then they extended it another 45 days. Yep. And I was kind of hard on him. If you read some of my articles, I wasn't going to let that pass because I'm like you said, kind of the rare type of journalist in America today where I really don't care whether you have a D or an R next to your name. I'm going to call BS when I see BS. I'm going to call it like I see it, and I'm not perfect either. I get things wrong. But I'm going to call it as I see it. But it seems like in the last 2-3 weeks, he seems to be finding his footing again. So let's hope that is the case. Fauci has Fauci really wreaked some havoc, though, while he was in there, John. I don't know about you, but I feel like there was some globalist strategic plays being played, and we were the ones being played with the lockdown.
Oh, I agree with you, but I'll tell you what, after, Leo, you fly in your own airspace.
Mm-hmm.
What I do is I make little incursions into other people's airspace, or it's not even an incursion. They invite me into their airspace, and I can fly around up there and look around a little bit. And I just wanted to propose this. Can you imagine the blowback if he had rejected Fauci's initiatives? It would have been the same effect as if General Michael T. Flynn had withdrawn his guilty plea. If he had done that, and Emmett Sullivan wanted him to, and that case would have been over. And guess what else would have been over? All of the investigations that have led to, they got the 16, 17 indictments, criminal referrals, DOJ's passed those on. I believe, now I've said this many times, and I'm going to say it again, with respect to you, one can always back engineer what must have happened to lead up to our current reality. You can always back engineer that story, what these things must have happened, whether it's true or not. What I'm thinking is the Democrats and the left would have gone insane if Fauci's plug had been pulled. So he just let him run some more. He allowed him to go out there and fail.
Did they not go insane with his plug not being pulled? I mean, the Democrats
well, they're going to go insane no matter what.
Yeah,
oh, yeah, well, they are insane because so they're in a permanent state of insanity, right?
They really are.
Here's the thing. In the same way that General Flynn not withdrawing his guilty plea and not pulling Fauci out and going, "Oh, you're an idiot." President Trump let him reveal himself as an idiot, and then here came some more stuff like Tedros Ghebreyesus, and what a loser he is, presiding over, was it 3 or 4 cholera epidemics in Ethiopia, and how tight they are. So the World Health Organization, as a result of Fauci being allowed to just run rampant, run amok through the land.
Yes.
The WHO is destroyed, and I'll tell you who I think is next, or what is next. I think the UN is next on his list. I think we should put them on a mothballed aircraft carrier and float them out in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico where they can't do any harm. I think they should be kicked out of this country. That said, that's draconian. Maybe we should allow them to be here so we can keep an eye on them a little closer, a little closer eye on them and their activities. But look what's been destroyed so far. The World Trade Organization is toast. The World Health Organization is toast. Fauci is toast. And all these mugs up there from Brennan to Clapper to Comey and all these mugs, they're all toast. They're being hoisted with their own petard, as it might be. He's given them so much rope, they've literally just hogtied themselves. It looks like Japanese bondage, what they've done to each other.
So that is a different perspective, correct. And I sincerely hope it continues to play out that way, John.
Me too. I could be wrong, certainly.
Yeah. This army of contact tracers that is being hired as we speak, most of them are already hired, I think, but they're being trained now, and some of them are already in operation. What's your take on that? I mean, it's being played as, quote, voluntary, but as I found out in my research, it's not voluntary. I have the order right here for the state of Georgia. Order for home quarantine. Can you see it? They did not want to give me this. They wanted to point me to their press release on the Georgia Department of Health, which says that it's voluntary to cooperate with these contact tracers, which are going to trace all of your contacts over the last 14 days and then track them and track you. And many of these people are going to be healthy people, because just because you were in contact with somebody doesn't mean that somebody ever got sick, as we know. And so we could literally have people going in and out, even though now the lockdowns are ending. We could have individuals going in and out of lockdown as a result of this mess. And if you turn, it's a 3-page form. They didn't want to give it to me, like I said. I continued to demand it under a Freedom of Information request and finally got a hold of it. And it's very clear in here, unlike the press release that you will find on the state website, it's very clear that it is anything but voluntary. on the second page, after it asks you a ton of questions about your personal health history, all of your friends, where you've been, have you traveled, where you go, the type of symptoms you may or may not be having, and then it comes down on the second page and it says in bold, take notice that failure to comply with this quarantine order is a misdemeanor offense pursuant to OCGA 31-5-8. And it continues on the final page in all caps. Failure to comply with this order may subject you to further action by the department, including a court order for involuntary detention in an appropriate facility other than your home, or such other action as the department may deem necessary to protect the public's health. Or such other action. They can do anything, it sounds like, under that, right?
Yeah, it kind of sounds that way. Yeah.
Right. And so this is going on in all 50 states, John, to one degree or another. Democrat governors, Republican governors, they're all doing it. It is quite simply astonishing, the power grab and the how well it could be abused. I mean, think about how this could be abused politically.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Oh, absolutely.
People who go to the protests, how would they ever track all the people they've been in touch with in the last 14 days? But oh, you Trump supporter, you went to a church or you went to a small gathering of fellow like-minded believers, we're going to track and trace you. We're going to make you download the app. That's another nefarious part of this plan. Many of the states make you download an app that is created by Google or Apple, and it tracks your movement everywhere you go. So you can't lie to them. See.
I can put the phone on a bus going to Boston.
Right.
Well,
I'm telling you, I've already decided that if anyone comes to my door, and I have a story, as you hinted with the article that's up on my site, the top story right now. It's a story about a 35-year-old man in Texas who experienced this, and two people in uniforms, one of them with a gun on his side, literally showed up at his front door to hand him this form, this order.
Ludicrous.
Yes, so it is being enforced over the barrel of a gun. They won't tell you that, and they'll say you're crazy if you say that, but that's exactly what will happen if you resist it. But I've already made up my mind that if anyone calls me or comes to my door from the Georgia Department of Health or my local health department, it'll usually come from your local health department. And they will be accompanied, in the case in Texas at least, they will be accompanied by a sheriff's deputy, an armed sheriff's deputy, to hand you this form or put it at your door. I am going to tell them where to go. I don't know about you, but they can speak to my attorney. I won't be talking to them.
Let me ask you this, just getting really fanciful here, and just all benefit of the doubt. Can you see any legitimate upside, however vague at all, in this? As in, for example, let's see if we can trace this back to where it really came from.
John?
Rather than it's just blowing around in the wind, the mass.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead, hit me.
Right. That's a good question. If they had done this I would have been against it, period, because I'm a free-thinking, libertarian-minded person. I value my freedom. I don't value the nanny state's opinions. However, that aside, if we just looked at it from a purely medical, logical, nothing political way of looking at it, something like this could have been effective like back in late December, early January, when the very first cases were starting to show up in our country. But to do this in June is there is absolutely no legitimate reason for it, because it will be impossible to trace. So many people have been exposed to this thing now that it will be impossible to trace all of the different avenues to where it's gone. There's estimates that, up to 25-30% of the American population has been exposed to this. So, no, I don't think at this point there could be any legitimate medical reason. It's just a fishing expedition to gain data, like technocrats always do. Technocrats want to gain and sift for data on individual people in the United States and any free democratic country. China is the model for this, John. If you look at a document, I think I have it here, that was put out by the Rockefeller Foundation in 2010. 2010.
Operation Lockstep. Oh dear.
Yes, Operation Lockstep. It describes the situation exactly like we have with COVID 10 years later. And who do they point to in this document as getting it right? China.
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
They said it had a more heavy-handed approach, but it was the most effective in stopping the spread of the virus. So, this is the way technocratic globalists think. They always want to take the heavy-handed approach. They always want to eliminate individual choices and individual responsibility. See, that's the thing. The gentleman in Texas who I talked to, he actually did have COVID. He was not one of the worst-case scenarios where you could have no symptoms and never have it, but you came and not even a trace of it in your bloodstream, but you spent 10 minutes with somebody who did. He wasn't that. He actually had a mild case of COVID. He said he just felt like he had a cold for about 3 days. But this, it's just, he would have done the right thing just as a person, he said. Personal responsibility. He said, I wasn't going to go out shopping. I wasn't going to go to my friends and family's house. I knew I was sick. I was going to stay home. And the people that he did come in contact with, he said he called them. He never gave, by the way, their information to the medical Stasi, the spies, the agents of the government. He never gave them any of his personal contacts. But what did he do? He said he called them every week for 2 weeks. He called them once or twice a week to make sure that they were okay. See, this is the government. When they enact a program like this, they always plan it out for the worst case scenario, the most irresponsible person. It's a back to the one size fits all template. And that's just not the way America has traditionally been run. We're individuals, we have individual rights and freedoms, but we also exercise individual responsibility.
Even at a stretch, I've kind of gone into science fiction novel writing mode right now.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, what if this was some sort of now this is just theorizing and nothing more. I don't want to waste your time with this. But what if this is the United States, elements within the United States and elements within the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese military that are trying to determine how effective this bioweapon is? Because we know that the New York Times, the Washington Post, we know that all these Ivy League universities, we know that ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, and CNN all take countless millions of Chinese communist money. I'm just wondering if there is any possibility that this is a white hat operation as opposed to a black hat operation. Right now, I'm not seeing it. I'm really not. I always keep that possibility open just to keep myself as unbiased as I possibly can. But Cedar Park, Texas, the only thing I know about Cedar Park, Texas, where this occurred, the basis of your story here, was how it was driving through there back in about 1990 or 91. It was 1993, I remember. And I got pulled over by a cop that looked exactly like my former father-in-law. And I got a ticket in Cedar Park, Texas. There's not a thing going on out there. And I'm thinking to myself, there must be a dozen better choices for a place to enact some contact tracing other than Cedar Park, Texas. That's just a little zit on the map, you know?
Right. But that tells you how they're going to leave no one behind.
Yeah, doesn't
Like,
it?
exactly. You know, so, right. And so let's go back to our narrative.
Yeah.
We saw all this stuff starting to come unglued from the globalists, starting to lose control. They put us into lockdown over this, and we can argue, you could argue so many different points on how this virus got unleashed, whether it was on purpose, whether it was by accident. We pretty much do know that it came out of this Wuhan lab, that it didn't just happen naturally like they originally said, remember? From some bat at a market, a raw food market, right? That was total lies. And that's the other thing. You never believe the government. Why? Because of their track record.
Yeah.
They're always lying to us. Always lying to us. Right. And so and so they put us into lockdown. And what did that do? What did that do? It isolated us, number one, and it put us in away from our friends, away from our family members. It separated us and it isolated us. It put us, and that makes us feel what? It makes us feel uncertain, afraid. We started finding out that maybe it wasn't as bad as they were telling us, but they kept feeding us the lies. And then what? Don't wear masks, wear masks. So it started not just to isolate us, but to divide us. We got divided between the mask wearers and the non-mask wearers.
That's absolutely true, man.
And I don't know about you, but the globalists may have been using this to get data and feedback and intelligence. Who are the followers? Who are the sheeple? Who will do what the government says, even if it makes no logical sense?
Leftists, always.
But I'm gathering intel as well. Okay? So now I know, even in my own little circle, if things get really bad, which as we fast forward into the riot stage of this, which now they're playing what? The race card to further divide us, as if we're not divided enough. They pull out their favorite. That's the race baiting.
Always.
That's the fallback. That is the fallback issue of Marxists, neo-Marxists. Marxists always want to divide. It's just take your pick on what the wedge will be. You know, it could be class lines, it could be transgenderism, you know, it could be male, female, it could be immigrant, native. They're just looking to drive the wedge. But the favorite one among today's Marxists is the racial issue. But the silver lining, I think, John, you can tell me how you feel about it, but as I'm out there shopping or walking around my neighborhood, if I see a guy out walking his dog with a mask on, or if I see my neighbor going to pick up his mail with latex gloves on, that's telling me, number one, he believes whatever the government tells him, that we are to be completely fearful of this thing. It's like floating out in the air, I guess. You know, I've even seen people walking alone in parks with gloves and masks on. They're that fearful of this thing. So what does that tell us? That should tell us that is not a person, if we know him, that we would want to be in a foxhole with, because they're not trustworthy. That's the type of person that will turn you in. in a heartbeat if push comes to shove, and this anarchy that we're seeing, which that's the stage they're at right now, creating chaos and anarchy. But we know from studying history that that is just an interlocker. That is a transitory stage. They want to do what right now? They're calling for defunding the police. Defund the military, defund the police, abolish the police, abolish the military, abolish corporations. They want to abolish everything right now. Or so they say.
That's communism.
That's the anarchy. That's pre-communist. Because, John, think about it. Communists love police. They absolutely worship police. They love it. They love the boot to be on your chin. So this is nothing but smoke and mirrors right now, them talking about abolishing the police. They want to abolish patriotic police. That's what they want to do.
Yes.
And after they ramp it up to the next level, past the stage of anarchy and confusion, which is where we're at right now, if we let it get to the next level, and this insurrection is successful, right? What will come then? The Stasi, like Hitler, he had his brown shirts, right? Which is like today's Antifa. The people thugs that get in there and just kick butt, cause anarchy, fear, and confusion. That's Antifa. But then after Hitler consolidated his power, he purged the brown shirts and brought in the
long knives.
Yes. And what did he do then? He brought in the SS.
Yep.
The black shirts, and made them the new police force, okay? So that's what they have planned for you, Mr. American and Mrs. American. It's time to wake up. Time to wake up. We are living in the repeat of history. Same thing with Mao's revolution. He used the Red Guards, just like Hitler used the brown shirts. These cultural revolution cops telling us what to believe and what not to believe. And you had to publicly repent of your sins in Mao's China during the 1960s. You had to literally get on your knees, and they would torture you by cutting off your hair real roughly and everything while you were repenting of your sins, and just to humiliate you. And you know what reminded me of that in our own case here in America, in the here and now? I don't know if you saw it, John, but they had they did a great video of the entire thing a couple days ago, where the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, did you see that? Where he was out there with all of these Antifa and Black Lives Matter folks, and they were telling him that he better abolish the police. And we want to know right now, Mr. Mayor, how do you feel about it? Are you going to abolish the police? And it got quiet, and they handed him the microphone, and he's sitting there. He was actually kneeling in front of them for a while, it looked like. But at this point, he was standing, and they gave him the microphone, and he's talking through his mask. And he said no, he could never agree to the full abolishment. He used that key word, like, I'll partly abolish them. But he said, I could not agree to the full abolishment of the police. And they turned on him in a second. And he walked out of this huge gathering. It looked like thousands of people in this outdoor area. And he just walked out hanging his head like a little boy who'd been spanked. It was unbelievable. And it just reminded me of Mao's Cultural Revolution. These people don't change. They always cast themselves as something new and fresh, but they're the same old tyrants.
To me, I've used this expression quite a lot in the last few days. Everything they do is a greed move disguised as some selfless, altruistic act in the interest of equality and fairness. Yes. It's too bad that the guy didn't just say, I'm not going to do anything you GD communists have up your sleeve. Nothing. Go to hell, all of you. Where are the men? Where are the balls Why is the spirit of the West so cringing, Leo? It makes me just angry on a spectacular level, and I have to like consciously back it down, or my eyeballs feel like they're about to pop out of my bleeping head when I listen to this nonsense being blasted over these 50,000, 100,000 watt TV stations, blowing this nonsense, this rubbish out all over the place, and people are so stupid they have no idea that just you can still see it in your rear view mirror. The communist agenda that's failed
Yes.
over and over again, countless millions of people murdered, tortured, disowned, all of these things. But you think this is just a great idea. Well, there's something else. And you're just the man that I want to pass this on to, although I've mentioned it a few times, but I haven't mentioned it to you. This Agenda 21 thing, I'll tell you what I think that really is. If you type into the browser of your choice, what is Agenda 21? You come up with a list of things. Well, we want to eliminate world hunger, and we want to reduce or eliminate racial disparities, and this and that, and a whole bunch of idealistic, leftist, moronic, hold hands and kumbaya talking points. That's it. But then they said, well, we discovered that we couldn't really fully achieve our goals by 2021, so we moved it out to 2030. But in 2021, in July, as I'm pretty sure you know already, we celebrate what? The 100th anniversary of the Communist Chinese Party. And in my opinion, that is Agenda 21.
I hadn't heard that perspective, but I would not be surprised because, these people are very big on building monuments to themselves. They want to tear down they want to tear down our history. There's a museum, I think it's a naval museum in Columbus, Georgia. It's a historical museum about the naval history of America. And it goes through, Revolutionary War, Confederacy, on to modern days. They burned it down. They burned it down a few days ago.
Who burned it down?
Antifa thugs, rioters. And this is what they're doing all over. They're trying to erase history.
That's what the communists always do. They take your flag,
Always.
they take your anthem, always.
And what do we see happening in the face of that? Big corporations, sports legends like Drew Brees, this is the latest, guys that had been holding out against this torrent of evil. Drew Brees is a great guy. I love him. But he capitulated. He said one day that he would never disrespect the flag. They came down on him. And a day or two later, he apologized. And if you think about it, he had to if he wanted to keep his career. If I were him, I would have said to hell with you, and I would have doubled down on it. I would have not only not apologized, I would have doubled down on it, and I would have sacrificed my career, especially at his age. He's like an older player. I think he's around 34 now. He's had a wonderful, Hall of Fame type career. He's got all the money he ever needs. Why did he backtrack and apologize? It really made me sad. Sad for him, because he's going to regret it. He's going to regret it.
Sure. I mean, has he forgotten that once he passes 35, 36 years old, his career is over? Women aren't going to try and get in bed with him, and nobody will buy him a drink either unless they're a hardcore fan.
Right.
But as long as he's in there in the game, the women will throw themselves at him, and he'll have all the drinks bought for him by everybody. But once he moves off that main sequence, they won't even give him the time of day. That's the way it is with every footballer. I see Troy Aikman walking around the Highland Park Village sometimes. He looks like a regular guy that suffered a few concussions, I don't I don't see women following him down the street. I don't see people trying to buy him a drink. I don't see anybody even going over to talk to him.
Exactly. If it is, it's going to be an old woman
Well, yeah.
who remembers him. Eventually, you're right. This is what happens to people in the entertainment industry. Right.
Well, particularly there, yeah.
It's sad. It's sad. And then you have the corporate world, Nike and Target and these companies that were looted in the riots coming out with their statements of, oh, we feel your pain and we understand. And, You know, it's more of the genuflecting and the bowing to evil is what it is.
Or there's this one character on YouTube that's insisting that white women get on their knees and apologize before the great wronged black and brown of the world. And listen, for some reason, I have visions of this thing called a Minimi, which is this 10-barreled 7.62 by 51 rotary Gatling gun that puts out 10,000 rounds a minute. And I'm just thinking, Lord, deliver me from such thoughts as this, because as I look back over human history, I notice that nothing changes until blood is running in the streets. Is there any way to avoid this? Because if there isn't, then I'm going to go load some magazines.
John, you just nailed it. That is my nightmare scenario that I feel like we're on the fast track towards. Is it just me? Every bloodletting revolution starts with a political revolution. Before the hot war starts, there's the soft war of the irreconcilable worldviews just clashing, and that's what I see the phase that we're in, and it's been ramped up over the last 3 months with COVID and now these riots. And isn't it interesting, John, how these people, Antifa, this is not just some out-of-control college kids like some people see it. It's more sophisticated than that. This is a well-orchestrated military operation. If you look at the way it works, they're sitting there, the kids with the young people, some of them aren't so young, but with communications earbuds, communicating with somebody else, the logistical moves, pallets of bricks being delivered where and when they're needed. If they can deliver pallets of bricks where and when they're needed, you bet you're behind that they can deliver AK-47s where and when they're needed, and pallets of ammunition. And so this is a practice run. I feel like it's a trial run for when the actual shooting war starts.
I am afraid that you may be absolutely correct on this, because we know damn well that cases of AK-47s have been dropped in neighborhoods on the south side of Chicago for years. And they're not the self-loaders either. You hold the trigger down and it goes blitty, 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 blitty until you're out of ammunition. Who's doing that? I talked to an Uber driver. She brought it up. This is a couple of years ago. She said, I just got out. I said, how are you? You liking the gig? I chat people up. That's what I do. And she said, oh yeah, I like this. She goes, I just got out of Chicago. She goes, let me tell you what, it's crazy. And she brought it up. She said, dropping cases of rifles up there in the bad neighborhood. She goes, it's insane up there. This is in a city of millions of people. This isn't too many, statistically speaking, percentage wise, but I know you saw 18 people killed in one day before yesterday.
Yes. Yes.
That's a lot of stiffs in one day.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that's another, remember, we're looking for silver linings here. We know who we can trust and maybe not trust, but also we can see which cities are going to be the first ones to explode when the crap hits the fan. You just named one of them, Chicago, LA, New York. Yes. Seattle and Portland. Those are really bad ones. Baltimore. People need to get out of these cities. Good people, black and white and brown, no matter what your color is, get out of these cities if you're not wanting to live under that type of threat. If you're not wanting a gun to be put to your head and say, bow to your new master, because that's what it's going to come down to. And I even would say get out of the suburbs as well, if you can. If the close-in suburbs are going to be fair game when the shooting war starts.
You believe it's going to start, don't you?
Until I see evidence that we're being pulled off of that track, yes. And John, I was going to say a minute ago, let me just finish that point. Isn't it interesting how these globalist elites who are calling in the instructions to the ears of the people on the ground, whoever these signal callers are, Isn't it interesting how they can dial up and ratchet up the violence, but they can also dial it down when they want? Like this past weekend, we had huge protests, but they were more peaceful. In Washington, D.C., I think they had the largest one yet on Sunday, but there was hardly any violence. Whereas a week before, what was happening, just random, horrific violence, burning police cars, burning businesses, small businesses, smashing the windows. You know, that David Dorn in St. Louis, that's another bad city, by the way, St. Louis. David Dorn is the 77-year-old retired cop, the black man, wonderful man. He went and answered a call to a burglary alarm at a small business, and they killed him and shot him execution style. There's no public funerals for him, no 3 days of public funerals like George Floyd. They don't care about that black life, do they?
Care
No.
about the fentanyl addict and the guy who that black woman reported had to point a gun at her pregnant belly and said, "Give me the drugs, or give me the gun, or give me the money, one of the two, or I'm gonna kill you and your baby." That's George Floyd. In my opinion, that life does not matter to me. I don't give a damn about George Floyd. Not at all. Or any other criminal SOB out there that does this kind of thing. I don't care. As far as I'm concerned, George Floyd got his justice. It's just too bad that it was done in that fashion.
David Dorn is the man I'm mourning. I'm mourning that life. He was a good man, and he was trying to protect personal property and people, and he paid for it with his life. Okay,
execution style.
Exactly. But my point is that these people who are running these riots and these protests, so-called peaceful protests, even the peaceful protests, they're carrying signs that say what? Their messaging isn't peaceful. No justice, no peace. Does that sound peaceful? No. And, fry them like a bacon, kill the cops, F the police. None of that is peaceful rhetoric. So I don't buy that they're peaceful either, even though they might not happen to be rioting at the moment. But my point is that these signal callers can call in the brown shirts or the red guards, whatever you want to call these thugs, Antifa. They can call them in when they want, and they can pull them back when they want. And so just because things seem to be dying down or we're in a lull, don't be fooled. Don't be fooled, people who live in these cities or in the close-in suburbs. Your time may still be coming, because I think we're going to have a rolling up and down situation at least from now to November, and even afterwards. Because think about if President Trump gets reelected, they're going to be rioting into January when he's inaugurated for his second term, and it's going to be much worse. So I guess my message is get out of the cities, get out of the close-in suburbs, and don't be fooled by any lull in the violence, because it's coming. It's coming.
Not often speechless, but I am now. I've been watching the potential for this scenario play out and get more likely and more likely and more likely for many years now. Many of my old crew members, so to speak, they didn't, bad diet got most of them, so they didn't even live. They checked out of here because of diabetes and this and that before the big day. But I have a feeling that this is going to get ugly because because of the traitors inside the United States government. They've been taken. So we think these politicians don't take money from the Chinese. Of course they do. But that thing, Feinstein, she walks after having a Chinese spy driving around disguised as a chauffeur for, what was it, 20 years? It's we have been sold out from within. And these people,
100%, I agree.
Did you notice one of these outfits even brought a guillotine to one of their little protests? Did you see that one?
No.
Yeah.
Well,
might have been a real one for all I know.
Well, it goes back to the French Revolution. Now, in the last hour, now we've talked about the Maoists in China. We've talked about the National Socialists in Germany. We could talk about the Russian Bolsheviks. But it really goes back also to the Jacobins in the French Revolution. And what did they do? They guillotined 30,000 people, and they hunted down and killed tens of thousands of other Frenchmen by other means. So right, they always package this under what, like you said, humanitarianism, and under the guise of, do-gooderism. We're just for equality, fraternity, the brotherhood of man. But they always fall back to their default, which is brutality. That's where it always ends in these left-wing movements.
Now,
You just said one of the two magic words, the other one being right, and that one that you just said being left. I keep hearing this thing about I went on a little bit of a tirade last night about the left-right paradigm. I keep hearing people talk about, no, you're looking at it wrong. You need to abandon the left-right paradigm. I'm thinking, really, if you know what a paradigm is, then what paradigm would you suggest, since it is obviously either the left, which represents abortion, open borders, destruction of national sovereignty, the whole laundry list of things that they do and have done historically, the same things over and over again, and people on the right who do not want open borders, who do not want high taxes or a heavy-booted thug-like police force that just dominates the citizenry. So what's the matter with the left-right paradigm, and why are so many of these people that many other people believe to be really smart, intelligent people, and when they say, get away from the left-right paradigm, the willing audience is just nods like, yeah, we need to do that. I say, bollocks. No, you don't abandon the left-right paradigm. That is the paradigm.
Absolutely.
If you disagree, please let me have it, because I don't want to go around wrong thinking if I'm going down the wrong trail.
I don't disagree, John. So I sometimes get tired of the Democrat-Republican paradigm.
Oh, absolutely. That's not the left-right paradigm.
Yeah, I don't see how that's useful at all, and it seems like a distraction. But the left-right paradigm, I'm with you, brother. I think that's what it's really all about. Because the left is always trying to corral people into a collectivist mindset. They don't value individual life. They don't value individual liberty. They don't value individual thoughts even. They want to unleash the thought police to where people won't even have wrong thoughts in their definition of right and wrong. They want to create a new morality. They want to replace God. Well, let me just read you the Weather Underground 6 precepts that were put forth back in the early 70s. Bill Ayers and that crowd. He's still alive, by the way, in Chicago. He was one of Barack Obama's mentors. Number 1, destroy capitalism. Number 2, the weapon of choice would be systemic racism and police racism. Does that sound familiar? Number 3, identify the victim classes. Number 4, organize the victim classes. Number 5, engage in international solidarity with the global movements. Well, what happened after the George Floyd case flared up and we started having protests here? We started seeing them flare up in Paris, France, and London, UK, in the Netherlands, in Spain. That's suddenly, what did they say? They said they were protesting in solidarity with their leftist American cousins. And then number 6, which is kind of the frosting on the cake, the crown on top of it all, attack and dethrone God. So, you go to the Black Lives Matter website and it's all there for you. You can tell that this is an evil leftist organization. Marx and Satan. There you go. Richard Wurmbrand. Yes, I'm very familiar with him. And Black Lives Matter, you go to their website and you read what they say they stand for. This is in their words, not mine. Pro-abortion, free and unfettered abortion, which that's the most racist thing because they're killing a whole generation of blacks. We know that Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, was an awful racist and she wanted to eliminate the blacks. They talk about abortion, they talk about transgenderism and LGBTQ stuff. What does that have to do with Black Lives Matter?
Not a thing.
Not a thing. So They reveal their true colors. They're leftists. They could care less about black lives. They don't care about the black life in the womb. They don't care about the black life that's exterminated by another black person. They only care about mostly blacks killed by white cops or any cops. And if you look at the numbers, that's still fairly rare. There were 1,000 police shootings, like 1,009 of them in 2019. There were 10 out of that 1,009, there were only 10 unarmed black people who were shot by police. And out of those, 6 went to their adjudication and were found to have been justified. So you're talking in all of 2019, 4 cases of unarmed blacks who were unjustifiably killed by police. 4. Does that sound like we have systemic racism across the board among police?
Oh, and not only that, let's not forget about the fact that more white men unarmed are killed by police every year. Now, if blacks really only comprise of 13%, if you notice, it's been 13%. I keep saying this, but it tells different people. The audience has heard it repeatedly. Why, for the last 40 years, has it always been 13% of the population? Not 14 or 12.5 or 13.6. Always 13% of the population.
Well, the same reason for 25 years we've had 11 million illegal aliens. But I do think there may be something else going on with the black thing, and it's what I just spoke about. Widespread abortion. Planned Parenthood has turned its focus on black people. They have clinics in these inner city neighborhoods where they literally prey on blacks. The black family, John, has been destroyed because of these leftists preying on them. These leftists are the racists. They hate black people. They would never admit it because that's their big issue. But they are the racists. The black family used to be the most close-knit, church-going, of all. They were more Christian than most white families in the 30s and 40s and into the 50s. But as soon as the left started targeting them and getting them dependent on the government, that's when all hell broke loose inside the families, and they were destroyed. And now 75% of black children are born into fatherless families.
Imagine if there were about 60 million more of them born into families that weren't really families because the father was absent. And, this may sound racist as hell, but it's a fact. It parallels precisely what goes on in sub-Saharan Africa. Folks, you've heard this one before, too. I'm going to run it past Leo. Each one of those men has between 10 and 20 wives. It's a fact. Each one of those women will produce between 10 and 20 children. The most outrageous story that I read on this was about a year ago. One woman had produced 22 children.
Well,
and the fathers just run off and go make other ones pregnant, because if they impregnate a woman, that's then his wife. Now, does he take care of her? No, he just goes on about he does exactly the same thing that this bunch up on the south side does, because church has been removed. I mean, if you don't have a rule book, if you don't have a guidebook, if you don't have a map, what do you expect it to do? Well, they just kind of wander around through life, just doing what suits them, and what they get is lip service from their so-called leaders, but they don't get any actual help, assistance, guidance, or anything else. They give them a phone or some little trinket. I mean, that's right in there with giving beads to the Indians for countless hundreds of acres of their tribal lands. It's the Democrats, the left wing, that's the biggest bunch of racists of them all. Absolutely.
And they want to have everybody either working for the government or dependent on the government for their check, because they know that's the only way they can continue to win elections. They know they can't debate us on the facts. That the last thing a Democrat ever wants to do is debate facts, because they don't have facts on their side. But if they can get people dependent, it doesn't matter. They can just basically blackmail people into voting for them.
That's pretty much it, isn't it? It really is. It's sad, but
That's why, school teachers, they're not all liberal, but it seems like they definitely trend that way. Uh, they get their paycheck. They know where their bread is buttered, right? And so it's on and on. Get with the bureaucracy in general, and that could be a topic for a whole nother show. Is the growth of the bureaucratic state and how unconstitutional and un-American that is, because our founding fathers had set up and gave to us this wonderful system that was based on what? Checks and balances, separation of powers, federalism, states' rights. There was so many checks on power that it was called like it was power and a layer cake system. It was layers of power. But the Democrats want to what? Grow the state bureaucracy. And that layer cake becomes more like a marble cake. See? Because what? You've got unelected lifetime appointees running the show, and there's no checks on their power anymore. It's sad. We've allowed it to happen, but now it has come to a head, and I'm afraid what the future lies for our children if we don't wake up. Our children and our grandchildren are really going to bear the brunt of it.
yeah, while they try to restrict firearms ownership, for example, of the citizens, what we've heard over and over and over again. Let's say they do manage to defund the police departments in New York and L.A. and Chicago and a bunch of these big cities. You know who they'll call? They'll call the UN in, and then you'll have a bunch of people here that have no sympathy with our culture whatsoever, do not speak our language, Lord only knows where they come from, and will have no qualms about shooting, raping, and doing everything else they do. Everywhere the UN goes,
That's
chaos
a great
follows.
point. That is a great point, John. And you know what it just reminded me of? The family of George Floyd, their attorney, what did he do last week? He called for the UN to intervene in the case, in the criminal case of this bad cop who killed Floyd. He called for the UN's intervention. That didn't get past me. I don't know about you, but that tells me a lot of where they want this thing to, what direction they're steering it in. And I think you just hit on it. Yeah.
I did not know that he had actually called on them to intervene in a criminal case. That's a little bit of a stretch.
Isn't it?
Oh my gosh.
He called for them to intervene and give their recommendations on how the Minneapolis or Minnesota justice system should handle this case. He told them what charges, I believe, to file, who should be charged, all this, that, and the other from your friendly United Nations.
I think they should be thrown out of here. We only have our own vote in there. So, what would it be? Brunei Darussalam has a vote, and the United States has a vote, and all of this is like, why would we want to be subject to the results of a vote taken among poop hole countries like that, whose civilizations do not come anywhere near the quality that ours once was, and I predict will be again, but I think it's going to be ugly. Everything runs in cycles.
Yes, sir.
And I think you're right. I think we're up on another cycle, and we're just going to have to, if we can't take their apparatus down, then, and these are my words, these are not Leo Hohmann's words. He may not agree with this at all. And if he doesn't, I respect that. But from my point of view, we either take this apparatus down, or we'll be put in a position where we will have to take the operators out. And I'm not squeamish about it at all, because these people want death. They want control. And I don't think that they should be allowed to have either. Not our deaths, not control over us. Why? Because they're so smart? Sorry, I'll stop now. You really got me fired up today, man.
I think it's all about that one word that just came out of your mouth. If we really want to get down to it, it's about control. And I think that was the way I started off tonight was, this drive towards greater control, which had been moving perfectly according to plan globally, not just in the United States. until Donald Trump and until Brexit and until these other movements started sweeping the globe. And it wasn't the plan got off track. Simple as that. And we're trying to put things back to the way they were. If we're thinking like a globalist, we need to put things back the way they were under President Obama, and even the Bushes were on the same track, just at a slower speed. But where we have to look at the end game and where that path was leading to. We hadn't arrived there yet, but we were getting closer and closer, slower under the Bushes, faster under the Obamas. But once we got there, see, the ideal of these globalists is, we already talked about it, sustainable development goals. There's 17 of them. They sound wonderful, but it's really not about even that. Some of the goals are out there. Talk about managing the world's resources. That's one of the 17 goals. Okay, if you think about how that would work where the rubber meets the road, that's kind of scary. They'll tell you how to live, where you can drive, whether you can drive, whether you can get on an airplane. You'll no longer have those choices anymore. The government will make them for you. That's your friendly UN 2030 agenda. Stepped up, pushed back from Agenda 21, like you said. But, John, in the end, I think they wanted to take us to Agenda 2030 in a more nuanced fashion, to where they would use our addiction to technology and our addiction to convenience to sort of lure us into it peacefully. And it's a form of communism called communitarianism. Communitarianism is just dressed up communism, where the people are lured into it to where they actually want it. They want this new society of greater control. But Donald Trump messed all of that up. And so now it seems like we're being pushed into it more violently. And that's what we see going on right now.
You got me pretty charged up today. I was all mellow before we started talking, and then I began to revisit everything that's been ticking me off. Yesterday morning was a little bit rough for me because I just when I woke up and got firing on all six, and I thought, what a mess. And I went over to the Drudge Report. There are all these negative stories all over the place, and I just thought, you know what? I don't care about this enough to depart from my philosophy of living, which is, I'm going to live my life exactly the way I want to. I'm going to obey the law. I'm going to stay out of its way, and I will not mess with anybody. But if anybody messes with me or mine, I've got the means to mess with them after that. And I'm prepared to take that to whatever level it needs to go, because you only go around once. And yeah, sure, I'd like to live long enough to see how everything turns out, but that may not be the case. So plenty of people died securing this country so that we could practice our religion, which is worshiping God and belief in salvation through Jesus. And if anybody else wants to come along, that's fine. But this is what we're basing this on. We're basing this country on the precepts set forth in Judeo-Christian scripture. Amen. And if these people think that they can do better than that, just like that idiot Lawrence Krauss that calls himself a scientist and a doctor, a friend of Jeffrey Epstein, of course. Mm-hmm. And even in the article, he reminds you 2 or 3 times that I'm a scientist. Mm-hmm. Illiterate people wrote the Bible.
Right.
The universe just is so cool, it just burst into existence on its own. This person is permitted to teach somewhere? Well, not anymore, because apparently he got too frisky with some of the co-eds, and they gave him the boot. This is the left. This is the left, and these are the sorts of academians that they hold in such high esteem, because they're twisted. So, hey, I think the case is closed on those mugs. The question is monitoring and then thwarting the efforts that they continue trying to foist on us by way of tracking and control and all of this, yes. like with this thing on your homepage, this contact tracing thing.
John, yeah, really. I mean, the contact tracing, again, it's coming in under the guise of the virus, but it's just a way to ramp up the surveillance state. This is after 9/11. We saw it, right?
Yeah.
We saw all the new methods and control measures put in at airports and public buildings and whatnot to, with the metal detectors and the cameras, right? Cameras on every corner now in every city, even smaller cities, started in the big cities. But now with the COVID, it's being ramped up to the next level, which is your private health situation, your health history. And that used to be that was the last bastion of privacy, was your relationship between yourself and your doctor, right? But now with COVID, even that is going to be taken away. And it is going to come down to a vaccine, I believe. And Gates has said we can't go back to normal until the whole world is vaccinated. He has said that several times in the mainstream media over the last couple of months. That's where this is heading. And it's not, people say, even Trump, this is another issue I have with President Trump. He's not pushing back against the vaccines, and he's saying that it will not be, will not be mandatory. But that is not anything you should trust, and I'm going to tell you why. The vaccines will not be made mandatory, at least not at first, by the government. Certainly not the federal government. Some states might. Some of the, more liberal states will do it. We're already seeing California and a couple of other states have canceled the religious exemption for school children. There's always been traditionally a religious exemption for your children if you don't want them vaccinated. California has done away with that, and now there's like 5 or 6 other states considering doing the same thing. But I don't feel like the mandatory aspect or component of this vaccination thing is going to come through the government. It's going to come through your employer. It could come through your employer if you work for a large corporation. It could come through the different corporations that own retail outlets, restaurants, go to a stadium to watch a ball game anywhere where there's a large gathering. They will check your immunity passport to see if you get cleared with your digital immunity passport, as Bill Gates has talked about, then you can go into the event. Then you can go into the store. See? So President Trump can say it's not mandatory, but he has no control over these corporations. And as we've seen, he has no control over the governors. So a state could make it mandatory, and the corporations could definitely make it mandatory.
I saw this article. We hardly ever publish anything from dailymail.co.uk because it's usually some woman stuffed into a scanty, a little scanty bikini that shouldn't be wearing one. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't care about some slag's workout program. I really don't. But here's their headline for everybody to see. And why would dailymail.co.uk be blowing this stuff out all over the place when it's a British-based publication? Exclusive. Minneapolis Police Union chief who described George Floyd as a violent criminal was accused of being racist toward black cops, being homophobic, and wearing a white power badge in a 2007 lawsuit brought by 5 officers. Why is that news today? Let's see, 13 years ago the suit was brought. Bob Kroll, 54, drew outrage after describing George Floyd as a man with a violent criminal history and calling protesters terrorists. Good for him is what I say.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they are.
Absolutely. I'm sure there's some do-gooders in there who feel like they're really doing the right thing. The useful idiots. But most of them, and anyone carrying a sign, I'm sorry, that says no justice, no peace, you can't be called just an idiot, because I don't believe anyone is so stupid that they haven't thought that through, what that means. No justice, no peace. That's a threatening statement right there.
What is their definition of justice exactly?
Well, it goes back to social justice, which is the old Marxist axiom, which was developed into critical race theory, in which the whole world and everything in it, all human activity is examined through the lens of race.
Well, if
And
that's the case, I would say they're on the losing side.
Yeah, you have two categories of people, John, and two only: oppressors and oppressed.
Right, of course.
And by the color of your skin, if it's white, if it happens to be white, then you are among the oppressor class, and you must repent of your sins.
Well, I'm not going to do any such a thing. You remember that? Do you remember that article written some time ago about how if you're white and you own a dog, you're probably racist? And I thought, well, we have a white German Shepherd, so I guess I'm one of the biggest racists of them all. So now
Yes,
I call
sir.
Charlie the yard Nazi.
You can't make this stuff up, John. You really
No.
can't.
Leo, you are a national. In fact, I think you're a global treasure. You're one of the few out there can just telling it like it is. You know.
I've decided, John, I'm not going to hold back. I'm just, it's too late of an hour for that. You either stand up, speak out, and resist this crap, or you bow down and submit to it. It's simple as that. And you have to look at where it's led and where it leads and where it always has led throughout history. And that's what convinced me that I just won't do it. I won't go there.
You've been so generous with your time, and you always are. And I don't want it to be. When were you on last? It's been a long time, but whatever it is, I'm looking here. This 2018. Well, that's not going to work for me. It's not going to be 2 years till we talk again if I have my way about things.
Okay. Well, I've grown more confident in what I believe, so I'm probably a better interview now than I was back then.
It's done it to all of us. It's hardened us a little bit because, unfortunately, we can theorize and we can analyze these things. But once you are sure that what you are looking at is in fact a duck, so to speak, that's not actually a duck. It's disguised as a duck. It's actually a flying rabid piranha with AIDS, and that's kind of what we're dealing with now. This is not a duck.
I came across this great quote yesterday. The strength of the vampire is that people will not believe in him. And you know who said that? You know who said that? It was Dr. Van Helsing in the 1931 movie Dracula. Fictional character, but yeah.
Well, who was it that said the greatest trick that the devil ever pulled off was convincing people he didn't exist?
The same type of thought, yes.
Yeah. Wow. In some ways, I miss the embrace of the new thought movement of the 1930s, Neville Goddard, people like that. It would have yielded some really good things had it made a little more progress and gotten a little more traction, because we could sure use a little new thought now. I don't think these people are actually thinking at all. They're just being emotionally lassoed and then directed toward somebody else's agenda, the fulfillment of somebody else's agenda. And it's sad, really, and for the defectors out there, we should be ready to welcome them with open arms if they decide, wait a minute, I think we're being played, because they are being played. And Leo, those people are going to wind up in the weeds, dead. As soon as their usefulness is spent, they will sacrifice however many. It's like the Chinese suddenly have 21 million Chinese cell phone accounts. Didn't come back online. Is that propaganda or what? The virus is very deadly. 21 million people.
Right. They disappeared.
I think we're living in the great deception right now. You can't believe anything that's put out to the public, as if the public is somehow different from the individuals that make up the public, and people are falling for it. It's disturbing. I don't mean to just go on and on like this, but I'll tell you, you really got me. You got my gears spinning. Stay as safe as possible and as strong as always. God bless you, man.
You too, John. Absolutely. Take care. Appreciate it.
Me too. Good night.
All right. Bye.
Folks, you heard what the man said. It's getting down to the brass tacks, as we say down in Texas. It's getting down to the nut cutting, and it really is. So I'm going to say it again. Don't do the deer staring at the forest fire thing. What is that? It's your destruction, little deer, and it's headed your way. So either go the other way and run as far and as fast as you can until you run out, or decide that you're not going to be a deer anymore. You're going to turn into
a warrior priest and a warrior priestess. And that's how you're going to handle this. You're going to go to your faith first, pray for guidance. And when you hear that small, still voice, and you'll know who it is when you hear it. That guidance will be offered to you. Follow it, and we'll make it out of this. If we don't, if we just continue to freelance with all these really dangerous ideas, a tragedy will be visited upon this country that will make the Civil War look like a minor skirmish. We cannot allow that to happen. Evil must be defeated. Now, I would say either get to fighting or get away. But there is no getting away. It will follow you. It will seek you out, and it will destroy you. Pick a side and prepare to get it on. And if we don't have to, good. But just the threat of our willingness to get it on, and I mean conflict, in furtherance of restoring and maintaining this republic, just the threat of it is enough to scotch the snake for a while. On a long enough timeline, it may kill itself, but we can't risk it. We cannot risk that. Communism and socialism needs to be destroyed inside this country. They want to destroy our capitalistic system. They want to destroy our free republic. Well, then they should be destroyed. And it is our patriotic duty, as enshrined in numerous documents, founding documents, that if the leadership in this country goes wrong, we fix it. The citizens do. But ignorance will not fix anything. We have to get smart, and we have to get fit, and we have to get committed. Start with your faith. I think I already said that. Start with your faith. From that, everything else follows. And you'll be all right. God bless, and good night.